Chapter 1. The Mists of Archibald. Archibald University was more than just an academic institution. It was a testament to legacy and prestige. For decades, its ivy-covered walls had stood as a fortress of knowledge on the misty fringes of New England. The graduates it produced were the kind destined to forge paths of leadership and influence, weaving themselves into the very fabric of society. Yet, as the annual graduation ceremony approached, an ominous cloud loomed over the campus, threatening to unravel the tapestry of its celebrated history. It began with Justin Reynolds. Justin was a brilliant chemistry major, often engrossed in his world of complex formulas and experiments. He was admired but distant, a whisper more than a shout in the university's vibrant social scene. On a dreary Friday morning just shy of graduation, his body was discovered in the secluded recesses of Hearthwood Forest, a shadowy area just beyond the campus boundary. To the authorities, it was a tragic accident. To his peers, it felt suspiciously like the opening act in a macabre drama. The murmurs were already proliferating through the hallowed halls when 2 weeks later, another student met a similar fate. Aisha Kumar, an art history prodigy and the light of every room she entered, was found lifeless in the same forest. Her departure was even more unsettling, stacking dread upon confusion. If Justin's demise could be dismissed as misfortune, Aisha's felt deliberator notes sung twice in a chilling melody. Sarah Grant was not one to ignore such whispers. A junior in the investigative journalism program, she had a keen sense for stories that hid between the lines of official accounts. Her instincts screamed that these deaths were more than just coincidences, a truth buried in the earth of Hearthwood Forest. Determined to unearth what was swiftly becoming the university's most foreboding secret, Sarah knew she couldn't do it alone. But who would dare to confront such an enigma, with stakes rising and a mystery deepening? Enter Professor Edmund Blake. Charismatic, brooding, and occasionally aloof, Professor Blake had a notorious reputation for unlocking the labyrinth of the human psyche in his criminology lectures. His lectures were immensely popular, a deep dive into the mind of crime that attracted students from across disciplines. Yet, under that facade lay a history, whispered about, yet unconfirmed, casting him as both player and spectator in the art of crime-solving. Sarah had never expected to approach the esteemed professor, her youth feeling dwarfed by his towering intellect. Yet she found herself outside his office, heart pounding against her ribcage like a judge's gavel against mahogany. As she raised her fist to knock on the slightly ajar door, it swung open.
Professor Blake, tall and enigmatic, smiled slightly. "Ah, Miss Grant, I was expecting you."
Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. Sarah stepped into Professor Blake's office, a sanctuary of knowledge that seemed to blossom in organized chaos. Books of all sizes and topics lined the walls, creating a tapestry of literature interwoven with case files and antiques that spoke of distant worlds and forgotten times.
"What do you mean you expected me?"
Sarah asked, suppressing a shiver of apprehension.
"News travels fast here, Sarah, even faster than one might think."
Professor Blake's gaze met hers, piercing through her hesitation.
"I saw you following the developments around Justin and Isha very closely."
Her pulse quickened at his words. It was as if he had known her intent before she could even formulate it fully herself. With cautious determination, Sarah stepped into her role.
"I don't believe their deaths were accidents, Professor. There's something more here, something the university wants to keep a secret."
"Indeed, many things lie shrouded under the surface at Archibald, Miss Grant. The question remains, are you prepared for what you might uncover?"
The weight of his words settled over her like a heavy, solemn cloak, but Sarah nodded.
"If it means finding justice for them, I am."
Blake's enigmatic smile widened, revealing a sharpness to his features that mirrored the dialogue he was about to have.
"Then let us proceed cautiously and perhaps jointly. There are elements at play here which are deeply rooted and well guarded."
Their investigation soon revealed an ominous pattern buried within the university's lush but shadowy history, a clandestine assembly known as the Ivy Circle. Formed decades prior, its rumored purpose was to protect a secretone wrapped in layers of influence, power, and whispered alliances. As Sarah and Professor Blake began to weave their way through layers of historical records and everything they'd gathered from the campus gossip mill, they faced their first clue, an esoteric symbol discovered etched into a tree deep within Hearthwood Forest. visible only by moonlight. A mark left intentionally, it seemed to be a piece of a larger puzzle, whose solution lay hidden in the overlapping realms of history, power, and academia. Chapter 3. Unveiling Shadows. The library became their second home, expansive and whisper-quiet, governed by a commanding echo of silence. Hours stretched into days as Sarah and Professor Blake combed through archives, seeking any mention of the Ivy Circle or related enigmas recorded within the hidden annals of the university. The deeper they dug, the more they realized how cleverly intertwined the society was with the university's narrative. Headmasters, professors, and valedictorians, all gilded names in the school's literature, seemed to have had some affiliation with the elusive society. It was as if an insidious undercurrent ran beneath the institution's very structure, shaping events with invisible hands. As evening shadows lengthened one day, Sarah stumbled upon something of note: a ledger from the early 1900s.
Here, this has to be more than mere coincidence.
She whispered fervently, thrusting the ledger towards Professor Blake. He studied the script, nodding with a tickling awareness that ignited the analytical part of his mind.
Yes, this is the first substantial thread we can pull. We'll need to research these ceremonies and their significance.
Their quest took them next to the older buildings on campus, where architecture itself whispered tales of old inhabitants. Hidden doors within the stone walls and cryptic engravings spoke of secrets best left undisclosed, details undoubtedly connected to the riddle they aimed to solve. As they made their way through the shadowed corridors, Sarah felt a tug of hesitation.
Professor, what if unveiling this leads to more harm than good? The deaths, they were a warning.
Professor Blake's eyes held a storm within them, complex and potent.
Ignorance flourishes where fear reigns, Sarah. Our duty is to bring the truth to light, whatever the cost.
Their resolve crystallized with his words, sealing their pact. More than allies now, they were seekers of truth, navigating an unsettling realm where danger met discovery at every corner. Little did they know, the stakes were about to become personal in ways they had not anticipated. Chapter 4. The Circle and the Cipher. Sarah's phone buzzed as dawn broke over the towers of Archibald University. Bleary-eyed, she reached for it and found a new email from an anonymous source. Her pulse quickened as she read cryptically encoded lines, which then cascaded into an ultimatum, a clock ticking down. Someone was watching them. Hastily dressing, Sarah rushed to meet Professor Blake in his office, her heart thudding like an untamed beast. As she arrived, their impromptu war room, notes and theories scattered around them, she shot him a grim look.
They know we're probing,
she announced, thrusting her phone towards him. He read the message with narrowed eyes.
This threat isn't just a message. It's a cipher. They're flaunting their power. But why send us this puzzle?
He took a moment, running fingers through his hair, then began penning translations on a pad. Sarah sighed heavily, trying to maintain her composure. It had only been days since they started their inquiry, yet it felt like they were years deep in this web of secrets and shadows. With a calm, patient precision almost effortlessly, Professor Blake solved part of the encoded message.
It's a location and instructions for something at the old chapel,
he muttered, his voice low and urgent. The chapel was one of the university's oldest constructs, a relic deeply rooted in Archibald's fabled history. For Sarah and Blake, it was both sanctuary and mystery, now charged with a weight of sinister potential. On their way to investigate, a pervading silence amplified the roar of their thoughts, a duality of anticipation and trepidation. They entered the chapel that evening, its arches casting distorted shadows under the amber glow of the chandeliers. Sculptures seemed to breathe benevolence or malignance, depending on the angle. The fifth pew's leg was revealed to be hollowed, hiding an envelope within it. Sarah pulled it free and unfolded its contents, a slip with just one line of text.
in the garden where truth blooms, hidden in the heart of ivy.
Another riddle, leading them further down this cryptic path.
Every step we take,
Blake said, carefully enunciating every word.
we become integrally tied to their narrative. This garden, we must find it, before they realize we're still investigating.
But the garden they sought was not one marked on campus maps. It was a fabled secret of lore, whispers of which only lingered in tales of alumni long gone. Chapter 5. The Garden of Whispers. The campus began to seem smaller, as though Archibald were closing in on them, perhaps trying to conceal its secrets before graduation night. Sarah and Professor Blake now walked a tightrope, where each new day brought new questions, and yet precious few answers. Their search for the garden turned up nothing concrete in libraries or archives. And then they hit a breakthrough. Professor Blake recalled an old academic, Professor Thomas Gale, who had been a fixture in the university decades ago, a scholar of not just history, but Archibald's myths. Though reclusive now, he might offer the insight they'd been unable to pin down. They found him in his creaky, book-filled home in a quiet corner of New England. Upon sharing their findings, the frail professor leaned back in his chair, a spark igniting his tired eyes.
Yes,
He murmured, a smile forming under his white beard.
I've long suspected the Ivy Circle's exploits, the clandestine actions. The Garden of Whispers is crucial, hidden, its entrance swaddled in the heart of the forest itself. Your endeavor is imperative.
Sarah and Professor Blake listened, noting every detail, aware that they themselves were planting seeds of trust that might yield the solutions they sought. Professor Gale spoke until his voice wavered into silence, leaving the air heavy with anticipation. Back at Archibald, and now armed with Professor Gale's insights, they retraced their steps through Hearthwood Forest. They let instinct guide them, picking a narrow, almost invisible path flanked by ancient trees that fed on secrets as old as time. A clearing greeted them. At its heart lies a structure of crumbling stone walls, intertwined with flora hidden garden where no path tread out. Here, legends of truth and lies intermingled within the ivy that adorned its grave dignity. They were close, shockingly close. As they circled, looking for a clue to decipher the circle's secret, dusk painted the horizon in hues of uncertainty. Professor Blake paused, spotting a plaque partially obscured by leaves. It bore a quote.
Where knowledge keeps the faithful vowed, power blooms without a sound.
It was followed by what looked like coordinates. Sarah quickly transcribed them, her heart beating with the rhythm of discovery.
This must lead us to the heart of everything. We need to decipher these coordinates.
Their footsteps retreated from the garden. As comprehension converged with an unsettling realization, they were now targets undoubtedly, but as determined as ever to unravel the destiny of Archibald University's dark past. Chapter 6. Ivy's Heart. The graduation ceremony was now just days away, festivities hastened by graduates clinging to aspirations ignited at Archibald. Yet among the jubilations, an atmosphere of suspended breath lingered. They could sense the tension coiling beneath the surface. Sarah and Professor Blake were relentless, having cracked the coordinates, directing them ominously back to the chapel. Every nerve tingled with awareness as they returned, knowing the night might either reap revelation or wrath. Inside the dim chapel, a discreet chapel vestibule they had previously overlooked now beckoned beneath watchful gargoyles. The coordinates guided their way down a stairwell, narrowly descending into an underground chamber. The chamber's air was cold, yet the floor was littered with candles sputtering in defiance of neglect. There, in the heart, lay a stone altar with the circle's insignia, threatening in its subtlety. Ancient scrolls and ledger-scriptic pasts intertwined with futures, yet unborn, covered the surface. Preserved in shadows, the altar's ledgers detailed the Ivy Circle's ritual selections, those judged worthy and those deemed expendable, like Justin and Aisha. Power, influence, bribes, and betrayals sheer lay a catalogue of malfeasance, exposing the rot beneath Archibald's illustrious veneer. Sarah and Blake's objective was clear: secure these documents, bring them to light. But as Sarah photographed each wretched page, their time waned, footsteps echoing through the chapel above. The real truth-bearers stirred, sensing their secret's sacrosanct domicile violated. With no choice, Sarah and Blake made their escape, navigating Archibald's labyrinthine passages, Ivy's heart pounding within their chests. They burst into the cool night air, daylight hinting at the horizon, carrying not just evidence, but justice itself. As dawn bathed Archibald University in renewed hope, the story, the true story, awaited the world beyond its iron gates. And with their collected archives of betrayal and courage, Sarah and Professor Blake vowed to bring the graduate murders to light, a resolution born from their own metamorphosis, one that redefined the very essence of Archibald University's legacy.